I wrote a blog post a while ago in which I suggested you take some time to have some friend time with your spouse. So in addition to having date nights and romantic getaways, you have this time that is protected from heavy discussions or any sort of decision making, one in which you just have fun and let loose. But the reality is that when you have young children, often you don't have the time, energy, or resources to make that happen. So I'm going to take the next 3 videos to share with you some practical tips and suggestions to do this. All of the ideas that I will be sharing come from the book And Baby Makes 3 by Dr. John Gottman, and of course my own personal experiences. If you want to pick up that book, you can find a link in the description below. Okay, let's get started. First off, why is maintaining a friendship with your spouse even important? Well, Dr. John Gottman and his team conducted some research on this. They were looking into what happens to marriages after a baby arrives on the scene. So they sat down and looked at some data they already had and came to some pretty shocking conclusions. About 67% of the couples were very unhappy in their marriages 3 years after having children. So even though that data was pretty surprising, they had another 33% of the couples who were still relatively happy and successful in their relationships. One of the things that these successful couples were doing was protecting their friendships with each other. And I promise it's not as daunting as it sounds. It's really how we interact on a day-to-day basis. And I know that all of you really do have the skills to have a friendship with your spouse because you have friends with other people, and at some point you were really good friends with your spouse because you were such good friends you married them. But often, especially when we have young kids, our life just goes into survival mode and we're just going through the motions of the day-to-day activity. Wake up, have breakfast, go to work, take care of the children, come home, eat dinner, bath time, bedtime, maybe crazy nighttime experiences and not getting very much sleep, and then rinse and repeat. And as a side note, deeper friendship leads to more sex. So if you're wanting more of that in your relationship, this is a great starting place. All right, so let's talk about something that we rarely acknowledge. When children come into our lives, when we experience being parents for the first time, a lot of priorities and things can shift and change inside of us. When once we would dream about having a little cabin by the lake in solitude, now we want to live in an urban, vibrant community, one in which we'll support our children and our growing family. This change inside of us is often really unexpected, and we don't think that our spouse might be going through the same thing. So let's take that little thought aside for a moment and think about the other friendships that you have in your life. What do a lot of your conversations consist of? Questions. Curious, open-ended questions. Did you see that movie? What did you think about it? Did you get the raise you were thinking about? Are you still wanting to go back to school to study writing, or have you changed your mind? How are your parents doing? How are you feeling lately? We're learning about the new person. We don't see them very often. We're curious. It's exciting. But with our spouse, we often assume that we know everything there is to know. There's nothing more to learn, and the questions stop. So if we take that other little thought that we were talking about before, where having children really change us, we can realize that this is a perfect opportunity to rekindle our friendship. There's lots more to talk about and explore. So my challenge for you this week is to ask questions. Do it in the car when your kids are napping in the back seat. Have a little texting conversation with each other during the day. Have your spouse call you on their speakerphone as they drive home from work, and you can do the same as you cook dinner. Involve your children in it at dinner time if they're at that level. Do it just before you fall asleep for the night after your kids have gone to bed. Or what about during commercial break, if any of you still watch cable? And remember to try to be genuinely curious about what your spouse is going through, what their life is like, what their world is like inside of them. Pretend that you aren't married with them for a little bit and treat them like a cherished new friend. So have fun with this during the week, and please let me know how it goes. So I'll see you next week for another tip on how to grow and deepen your friendship with your spouse without having to get a babysitter. Bye!